Good afternoon. I'm David Talbot, Managing Director, Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. We continue today with NexGen Energy. Leigh Curyer, President and CEO, is speaking to us today. NexGen Energy is developing and permitting the very large, very high-grade Arrow deposit located in the southwest corner of the Athabasca Basin. So Leigh, you're going to have 15 minutes here, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A session at the end. Attendees, please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A link below. So take it away, Leigh.
Thank you, David, and absolute pleasure to be on today's seminar with Red Cloud, who are doing amazing things with expanding their platform dramatically, and it's really, really good to see a firm supporting the mining industry, but also specifically the uranium industry so prominently as Red Cloud is. Just forward-looking statements, that's also on our website, and please take the time to read at your leisure. Look, 2021's been a really hectic start to the year. After 2020, where we only actually had 3 press releases around COVID, financing, and the appointment of our Chief Project Officer, Tony George. It felt like a real quiet 2020, but behind the scenes, there was an enormous amount of work being conducted, and it culminated in the first 3 milestones for 2021, which was conversion of our CEF convertible debenture to equity of 120 million US. CEF, for those who don't know, is owned by Leigh, one of Asia's richest individuals, a very heavy investor in Canada and all around the world. With that conversion from debt to equity, alongside his existing equity, he now currently accounts for about 18.9% of the NexGen shareholding. Shortly thereafter, we released our feasibility study, which was incredibly well received with respect to validation of the highly economic outcome of Arrow project, plus the environmentally elite design plan that we have incorporated into that feasibility study. And then very shortly thereafter, we did a financing of 172 million Canadian in March. And so that has taken the Treasury to $210 million, which provides us excellent funding to keep optimizing this extraordinary project that the Rook I Arrow deposit is. And I look forward to talking about that in a couple of moments. We've had many team additions as well throughout 2020 and 2021, despite COVID. I was just telling David, I think we've got 12 employees who have yet to actually venture into the office. And that's just a reflection of the times, but they've immediately assimilated into the team. And the most recent was our Chief Financial Officer, Harpreet Dhaliwal, who has joined the company, who's got excellent experience in mining and multi-operational mining companies. So she's been a very welcomed appointment, and also seamlessly joined the team and is doing a terrific job. Ahead of us, we've got our maiden sustainability ESG report coming out very, very shortly. Our community agreements are ongoing, and we're in very advanced stages of negotiation with the local communities in our local project area. And we have really culminated this year in the EIS and licensing submissions that you're going to see scheduled for the end of this year, of which that feasibility study was a key component of 2021 and embedded into the EIS, along with all the other studies that we've been doing. So we've had an exciting start to the year, but we've got an incredibly exciting balance of the year ahead of us, and then 2022 and beyond as we go into construction with this exciting project. And overlaid on the top of this, we've got an excellent uranium market. And I'll say, in terms of excellence, I think I've been in the industry since 2002, about 20 years ago. And to see that the general public's appreciation of what nuclear is in being a very clean, green electrification source is absolutely overwhelming. I've never experienced such positive general public appreciation of nuclear in my time in the sector. And I think Australia, where I'm from, it's probably one of the toughest public opinion places on the planet with respect to nuclear. And in my home state of South Australia, you've got local communities actually vying to be the location for a nuclear fuel repository. And I think that is a very pertinent shift in the general public opinion around nuclear. And people are passionate about it. They want to see climate change arrested, and they want to see very responsible production of power and electrification. And so two aspects which have been very prominent in the news of late is firstly Europe with their science arm officially recognising nuclear's clean, green and safe, and that'll be going before the European Parliament this summer to be ratified, which will basically expand the pool of available investment into the nuclear space. And as we all know, there's not that many homes in nuclear to deploy investment. So incredibly exciting for investors into the uranium space about that particular development. But only a couple of weeks ago, we also had the US really start to signal that their support for nuclear is going to be very, very strong, because the recognition is we will not meet our climate goals unless we have nuclear as a key component of that. And it most likely is going to come in the form of subsidies for existing nuclear power stations, which will just be incredible for the whole market. But this is all on top. This is a demand theme that's all on top of an existing supply and demand situation where mine supply over the last 10 years, there's been a significant underinvestment in it. And looking at the outgoing or the future status of supply, I think it's one of the weakest I've ever seen it. Back in 2004 to 2008, when we saw the first supply tremors come into the market at that time, and the price went from $10 to $140 just in the space of 4 years. Production at that time was in really good shape, and it had a very good 10-year outlook as well. But if you compare it back then, when the price still went up 14 times in the space of years, to now it's a far more precarious supply side situation that we have ahead of us in the interim period. Just getting on to the Elite Arrow project. Well, the tier 1 asset, there's no doubt about it. This is the largest, highest grade uranium deposit in the world, and we are still trying to understand just how big it is. We've got still a lot of work to do before we can fully appreciate the true extent of Arrow. But even so, with that ahead of us, we already have the world's largest, highest grade uranium deposit. And so it's going to be very, very long life. It's environmentally elite, and I'll go into the reasons for that in just a moment. But it also exists on the lowest end of the cost curve. If you put that cost curve for, say, uranium projects that are capable of producing over 5 million pounds per annum, it's no doubt it will be on the lowest end of the cost curve, like the lowest. And we're in Saskatchewan, which is the #1 ranked jurisdiction globally to develop and operate a uranium mine. So we certainly meet the three characteristics of what is deemed tier 1 assets. And I think we clearly meet the definition of the asset in that category. Just getting onto the strategic, highly economic and environmentally elite outcomes of our deposit. And this is assuming a $50 uranium price right throughout. The NPV at an 8% discount is about 3.5 billion. Its after-tax payback period is 0.9 of a year. Now that's just extraordinary, but what that says is the project is able to accommodate a large portion of debt. And so between now and positive cash flow, you're going to see a very little amount of equity actually raised between now and positive cash flow because of that payback period, and the superior economics allows us to accommodate a large percentage of debt with a small percentage of equity through to positive cash flow. 1.3 billion capex, of which we've already got 210 spoken for, 157 of pre-commitment early works. We've got the ability to start a number of the early works whilst we're running the final stages of the permitting process in parallel. And we'll be producing about 30 million pounds per year over the first 5 years. Now, what is extraordinary is that that's only coming from about 1,300 tonnes per day. And 1,300 tonnes per day is about the volume of 2 city buses side by side. So it's an incredibly small mine, probably one of the world's smallest underground mines, yet coming out with just extraordinary economic consequence. And our initial mine life of 10.7 years is in accordance with 43-101, where we were only able to incorporate the measured and indicated resources. I showed you on the previous slide that we have about 80 million pounds outside of the high-grade heart of inferred resources. With additional drilling, that'll convert into measured and indicated. And then when we also bring into the resource statement additional mineralization that's not currently there, but has been identified, we are very, very certain that the resource size of Arrow is going to grow materially with additional drilling. Just some top 5 feasibility outcomes. Look, this is going to be the most environmentally elite mine on the planet, and that's a consequence of its technical setting, but also the design parameters which we've incorporated into it, being the underground tailings management facility is one of them. I won't go into each one of these in the interest of time, but there is incredible outcomes from this feasibility study that we've demonstrated, and it's also filed on CEDAR. It's about a 350-page report where you can go and have a look at all the specific details around these numbers. Why is Arrow so special? Well, not only is the size and grade so incredible, it's in a very unique technical setting where it's completely contained in the crystalline basement rock. It's about twice the height of the CN Tower in Toronto in terms of its vertical extent. But the other benefit of being in crystalline basement rock, where you've got incredibly competent ground conditions, is that you've got also a very clean metallurgy. So when you bring that ore up to surface, you've got a very, in a mining sense, straightforward processing circuit, and incorporating a very small footprint. Footprint probably of the Arrow project be consistent with the Rogers Arena in Toronto there in terms of the total footprint size of this Arrow project. So again, very, very small footprint and very, very benign with respect to the environmental consequence. Some of the aspects which just make this an economic powerhouse is at $50 a pound, it has 3.47 billion NPV. It'll generate about $1 billion after tax every year at $50 a pound. And when we go into production, we're extremely confident that the price of uranium is actually going to be significantly higher than $50 a pound. But at $1 billion after tax cash flow a year, net cash flow, that'll take us into the top 15 mining companies worldwide. And incredible to think that's coming from a single asset in the best jurisdiction, and you have an elite ESG profile overlaid on the top of it. Well, we are going to be the preferred destination of any sensible investor in the market. I've mentioned before, we've still got an enormous amount of drilling to go. Arrow, which is on the left-hand corridor there, or the left oval in red there, we've still only explored about 10% of that corridor. And look, to think that we discovered Arrow with only with the 21st drill hole on the property, but also the only drill hole within a 4-kilometre radius of that target at the time, was just an extraordinary outcome. And it's very confidently we believe that there's additional Arrows, and we're going to be back drilling this July and doing an exploration campaign. And then we've got other corridors still remaining that we need to drill, and they keep going further to the east off this page. but we could have 10 rigs for 10 years and still not complete the full geological evaluation of our Rook 1 property. Just quickly, in the interest of time, responsible tailings management, underground tailings facility, it's part of an elite environmental perspective that we'll have. Basically, all the tailings will be stored underground, which will be amazing come many decades from now when the project's completed. Within a short period of time following the cessation of activities, you'll be hard pressed to even know that there was actually a mining operation in the area. Just from a social and economic benefits, we're well known for our programs in the local project area, summer education, health and wellness, economic capacity building. The Prime Minister came up to the Losh and formally recognised the good work NexGen was doing along. And on the bottom there, we've got the current mayor, former mayor of La Loche, and the premier of Saskatchewan at our local breakfast club there. Capital structure, I mentioned before, CEF Holdings, Leigh Ka-shing at about 18-19%, followed by Queen's Road Capital. Queen's Road Capital, headed by Warren Gilman, who was formerly Leigh Ka-shing's resource investment guy. He started Queen's Road Capital to facilitate a number of Australian mining billionaires coming into the space, one of which is Andrew Forrest, who runs the $75 billion Fortescue Metals Group. It was only in 2005 that he was a $5 million exploration iron ore company. He's a big fan of NexGen and what we're doing, both in terms of the technical approach, but also the community approach. And then Mega Uranium, one of our founding shareholders, run by Richard Patricio, enormous support right throughout the entire history of NexGen. And then we've got Kopernik, Segra, CQS, the who's who of the mining investment space in uranium. As I said, $213 million in the treasury. We're well financed. And we also have a 51% ownership in ISO Energy, where we spun off our Western assets after discovering Arrow. And they recently discovered the Hurricane deposit and are building a very dominant portfolio in the eastern side of the basin there. So I think that wraps it up, David. And just in the interest of time, I might hand over to you for any questions that you or your audience may have.
Okay, thanks, Leigh. We've got about 3 minutes left, so let's make this quick here. Just your EIS and license applications are coming in the second half. How quickly do you think you'd be able to receive those?
Yeah, look, I think it'll be very efficient. I think the strength of our EIS and licensing applications is that it's been a consistent process for the last 5 years of working with the regulators and saying, this is what we're permitting, this is the level of validation we've done. Would you like to see anything else? And it's with an enormous amount of certainty that that EIS that we're submitting is really just the formal documentation of all that work over the last 5 years. So the regulators, both federally and provincially, are very well aware of what we're permitting. It's a very technically simplistic operation environmentally as well. So we're not doing anything fancy or unique or specialized in that sense. So I expect it to be very, very efficient, and that's the feedback I'm receiving as well.
Okay, thank you. This is a very popular question, but what are your plans with ISO Energy? Is this something you're going to keep, or do you plan to use it to help finance construction?
Yeah, well, we've continually funded it right throughout its life, and 51% ownership of ISO with a market cap at the moment, I think, of about 250 million. Yeah, that's significant. 125 million off the capex of Rook 1 is already a fantastic start. But I think in a rising uranium market, as well as ongoing exploration at ISO, I think the dollar value of our investment in ISO when we come to build Arrow will be significantly higher, and that'll be fantastic news for NexGen shareholders. So that's basically our perspective on it. We've supported it all along, and we'll continue to do so because we see the value in it down the track and coming off the capex of Arrow.
Okay, perfect. Well, with that, Leigh, we're out of time. It's been great chatting with you today, and everyone,